Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new. And today I'll be breaking down this 7-game NBA slate here for Saturday night. I know we have a bunch of football on, but still there are NBA games. So I'll be talking through kind of who I like, who I don't like, doing a game by game breakdown. Throwing people into the lineup is kind of an early look player pool. As always, injury news does change everything. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And let's get right into it. So jumping over here to the spreads and game totals, because as we can see, there is a game earlier today, the Bucks versus the Pistons, but that is not on the main 7-game slate. So jumping into the first game here, Sixers Hornets, 11-point spread, so huge blowout risk. 229 total. Spurs Wizards, 2.5-point spread, 241 total. That's a really good game to target there. Two very bad teams. Should be a lot to like there. Cavs Hawks, 2.5-point spread, 230. Raptors Knicks, 7.5-point spread, 229. Grizzlies Bulls, 7.5-point spread, 216.5. That's pretty gross. Jazz Rockets, 2.5-point spread, 233.5. And then Thunder Timberwolves, 3-point spread, 228.5 total. So jumping into this first game here, as I mentioned, fantastic game environment. Getting some cheap guys here. Victor should be back here. So at 8.7, I haven't really gotten to Victor yet this season just because he's limited on the minutes, but still, mid-20s minutes, and this dude's still averaging 45 fantasy points per game. I think he's a solid play for tonight here in this matchup. With him back, Vassal's floor should go down a little bit, but I still think he's a solid play. Same thing to Keldon Johnson. They both have upside. They're there, coming in at fine price tags. More so just secondary options for me. Trey Jones does have some upside as well. As you can see, he's been solid, kind of floating around that 28 to 30 fantasy point per game mark. 5.8K, he's there. Obviously, it's a great matchup, great game environment. So I do give these guys a pretty strong rating as like a very strong secondary option play for pretty much all these guys: Victor, Vassell, Keldon, and Trey Jones. Collins is out. In terms of the rest of the guys, Sohan should go back down to playing about 30-ish minutes, but he's not going to be as aggressive as he was last game. He's a fine play. He's there. And then Barlow should play some minutes off the bench. Interesting value play. That's really it. It's not much like here for the Spurs size, besides kind of the main guys I just talked about. For Washington here, I actually do really like Kuzma. We know he's going to be the leader of this team. If he has a good game, it's mostly them keeping it close. So yeah, Kuzma looks like a very, very solid play for tonight. I like Tyus Jones here. You got the matchup of the brothers. Only scored 2 points that last game, but still went for 35 fantasy points with 15 assists. So if the game can stay close and he sees 30-plus minutes, he should have a pretty solid game. So I actually have a good amount of interest in Tyus Jones right now. Denny, solid secondary option. It's just he's not involved offensively too much. You can have those random games where he does pop off for good amount of assists or rebounds, but still, just not enough for me. Gafford is questionable. If he's good to go and there's no minutes limit, I think he'd be a solid play. They do have Bagley, who did start for him. So once again, if Gafford is out, Bagley should start. He played 39 minutes in that close game there and had a huge game there for 46 fantasy points. So I think once again, if there is no Gafford, Bagley pretty much becomes a lock for me at 5,000, just because he should play all the minutes at center. A little bit of a tough matchup guarding Victor, but still, Bagley's just way too cheap there for his expected role, this game environment. Now, if there's Gafford, I expect Gafford to see about 30-ish minutes, and then Bagley would probably see about 18 minutes or so. I expect that to be the split there. I think they'd both be a fine play. In terms of the rest of the team, Jordan Poole is always an option for GPPs. We know the upside there with him if he hits his shots, but he's been god-awful this year. That's really it. I don't think we really need to look at anyone else here, dip down to anyone else. All kind of just there. Moving on to Philly here versus Charlotte. Obviously, a fantastic matchup here for Embiid. Let's see what happened the last time they played Charlotte. Put up 42, 15, 70 bomb. Embiid's been unreal this season. If you expect this game to stay close, or even if it blows out, it's most likely going to be because of Embiid. I don't know if there's really been a game this season where everyone's gone off on the Sixers and Embiid hasn't. It's pretty much been him leading the charge. So he looks like a safe spend up in a fantastic matchup here. Charlotte has no bigs right now to be able to guard Embiid. Really like him. Maxey looks like a strong secondary option. Tobias is there. Don't love the price tag for a guy that is kind of the third option. He feels priced about right. In terms of the rest of the guys, no one's really coming in at a discount. Kelly Oubre is there. She's playing solid minutes now recently, but still the shot attempts are not there. Everything's going through Embiid. Everything's going through Maxey. Then Tobias is pretty much the third option. So it's like he's just getting the scraps. I mean, he'll have some random pop-off games, but unless one of the main 3 guys are out, Oubre is really not in contention, and there's really no need to get to him. Same thing for the rest of the guys. I mean, Batum's priced up to 5.2K. Minutes are kind of all over the place. Not the best value at all. Beverly, his minutes had gone up recently, and they've been up for the past 2 games, but still, at 5,000, you're not getting a solid play on a guy like that, who's not very, very productive. That's really it. I mean, on to Charlotte here for the Charlotte side. I mean, LaMelo Ball, if this game stays close, it's going to be because of him stepping up. It's going to be because of at least, Rozier and someone else stepping up as well. So I do have some interest in these guys. They should be very, very low owned. They're pretty solid secondary plays just because of that low ownership. But I mean, yeah, if this game stays close, it's going to be because of LaMelo and at least Rozier and Bridges doing well. 2 of the 3 should be having really solid games to keep this game close. I do like PJ Washington. Once again, if he starts, obviously it's going to be a nightmare for him trying to guard and beat if he does start. So obviously there's huge foul trouble risk, but he should be aggressive. I mean, he should have the opportunity to get some rebounds. 5.4K is a very cheap price tag for him, who's a guy who can hit shots, usually decently aggressive, can get some rebounds. So I like him. I just don't know what they're going to do with the starting lineup, trying to guard Embiid. Hopefully Nick Richards is back, because if that happens, you could definitely take a shot on Richards if he stays out of foul trouble. 5.2K. He could see mid-20s minutes and definitely pay off. But otherwise, I hope he plays so we can get to PJ Washington down there, coming at a very cheap price tag, 5.4K. He should be super aggressive off the bench. Now, obviously, would see a ton of minutes there if Richards gets in foul trouble. Cody Martin should see mid-20s minutes. I think he's a fine value, 4.2K. He can have those games where he becomes very, decently aggressive. So I don't mind taking a dart throw on him, and that's really it. Moving on to Cleveland here versus Atlanta. Garland Mobley's still out, so obviously the team is going to be led through Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen. Both look great here against Atlanta. Great matchup. Karis LeVert should play off the bench. Only thing I don't like about Karis is the minutes have just been god-awful for him off the bench. Like, there's games where I'll play low 20s minutes. I mean, he should be cracking 30-plus minutes with no Garland, no Mobley, and he really hasn't. I don't know why, but yeah, he's doubtful. So with him doubtful off the bench, that's just more of a boost to guys like Allen, Mitchell. They should be more aggressive offensively. A guy like Strus, I'm considering, just because it's a fantastic matchup. He's been god awful this year. I think he's got the 2nd worst field goal percentage in the league right now. But they're going to need his offense. I mean, with no LeVert off the bench, who is doubtful, they're going to be very, very short-handed in terms of guys who can score. So I think we're going to have to consider Strus. I think we throw Donovan in there. And then guys like Okoro, I think is actually a very strong value. He should see, probably 10-plus shot attempts here in this game. He should see a good amount of minutes, 4.5K. We saw games at the beginning of the season where, he has the ability to go for mid-20s, even 30-plus fantasy points if he can hit his shots. As you can see here, he should play all the minutes he has. I think there's a lot of interest in him there for me. And then I do think we take a shot on Merrill there at 4.3K, a shooter. Playing decent minutes, as you can see here. He's been pretty solid. So 4.3K, we can throw him in there as another guy we have a ton of interest in. That's really it. I don't think there's a need to get to anyone else. Niang had like a career game there that last game. Didn't really miss a shot. That's about it. Moving on to Atlanta here on the Atlanta side. Trae Young, if he does play, really good matchup here. Now, if he's out, which he was last night, back-to-back for the Hawks. So I guess maybe a little bit of blowout risk, but we should see. Hopefully not. But once again, if Trae Young's in, I think Trae Young is a very good, solid spin-up option. Murray would be more so of a contrarian play. Jalen Johnson's always in there for GPPs. He's always in contention. That's really it. I mean, Capella, 5.8K would be coming in a solid price tag. They'll need him again going against Jared Allen. But otherwise, everyone else is kind of secondary options. Now, obviously, if Young is out, we're going to want to look to, if not lock in, DeJounte Murray once again, who had a really, really good game there, almost a 50 bomb. Bogdanovich had a very, very disappointing game. Played 35 minutes, just didn't really shoot the ball well, didn't do much peripheral stat-wise, so only 22 fantasy points, but I expect him to bounce back. Be a very good option there if there's no Trae Young now. If there's Trae Young, I don't know if I'd get to any of these secondary options. I think there's other ones across the board who are better that have gone through and will go through. That's really it. I do like a Okongwu, 4.8K, price did come up. He's there. Moving on to Toronto versus the Knicks. Toronto side, once again, I think Scotty Barnes is coming in at way too cheap of a price tag. It was absolutely unreal for us there. Almost dropped it in the 60 bomb against the Bulls. Once again, 8.3K. I mean, him and Quickly are going to lead this team. Barrett's going to be like that strong second/third option who's actually been playing decent, but still, I prefer getting too Quickly. prefer getting two Barretts. Quickly, it's going to be a little bit more up and down compared to those guys just because he's a little bit more reliant on the shooting, not as much as his peripheral stats, but still, I think all three are solid options, but I really just prefer getting two Barretts, or excuse me, Quickly and Scotty there. Schroeder, 5.6K off the bench. I think he's a solid option. In the minutes, you should see, high 20s, even into the 30-minute range. Usually aggressive, has an assist upside, but I do think they're going to start slowly filtering them out just because this team is probably going to tank, let the young guards play. They have nothing to play for this season. Bruce Brown, interesting play. He did play 25 minutes and was very efficient. So I could see him, cracking the starting lineup here or just being the guy that sees 25 to 30 minutes off the bench. So 5.5K, I would assume he's going to be more aggressive on this team than he was on the Pacers just because this team has nothing to play for. So I think he's going to, they're going to have him play aggressive to raise his, trade value and then trade him out before the deadline. Gary Trent Jr., a little bit too scoring dependent for me. That's really all he's in there for. Jonte Porter, I actually don't mind him. Played 20 minutes, was decently productive. 4.5K if you're looking for a cheap guy, he's there. Thad Young will split the center minutes with him. They're there. That's nothing really crazy on that end. Moving on to the next here. Obviously, a good matchup here going against Toronto. Brunson, Randall both look like strong second options. Same thing with Hartenstein. Don't mind them. That's really it for the rest of the team. I don't think there's a need to get to any of these wings. They're just there. They're priced about right. Moving on to Memphis versus Chicago. Memphis, if this game stays close, it's going to be because of Jaren Jackson Jr. As I mentioned, he's going to shoot the ball 20-plus times. It just comes down to, can this game stay close? If it does, and he's out of foul trouble, he should shoot the ball 20-plus times and play 30, probably 35 minutes and have a huge, huge ceiling. So I really, really like him if you think the same game stays close because of the massive amount of usage he should have. I think Vince Williams is a strong play. Been playing huge, huge minutes there. Very, very good defensively. And he's been, picking it up offensively and peripheral stat-wise. Tillman, they'll need his defense against Vooch, so I think he's a strong play at 5.3. I still think Luke Kennard's a very strong play there at 5.2. They're going to need his offense, so would expect him to shoot the ball a little bit more. Gigi Jackson was very disappointing in that last game, only 10 minutes, so there's a huge risk with him off the bench. If he gets hot, they'll extend him. If not, they're going to keep him on the bench. I think the only one I have interest in off the bench would probably be Santi. They're going to need his size. They're going to need his aggressiveness, so 4.4K for him is a fine play. That's really it. I mean, Gilliard's minutes went down as well. So the minutes are all over the place for this team. I really only trust Vince, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Luke Kennard, and then more so Tillman and Scotty, or Tillman and Santi are the secondary options for me. Moving on to Chicago here. Really, really like the matchup for Vooch, DeRozan, and Kobe White. Zach is out, so it's just more of a bump to Vooch, DeRozan, Kobe. I think Kobe's too cheap. Same thing with Vooch. DeRozan's fine, but I really would rather get to Kobe and Vooch here, especially Kobe, 7.1K. Having Zach out really, really helps him in terms of just the ball handling. Zach's the other guard that had handled the ball a ton there when they were playing alongside each other the past 7 games. But still, I mean, as we can see, Kobe has massive upside. He did go through a little bit of a weak stretch here recently in terms of his shooting, as you can see here, but he really picked it up the past few games, even with Zach back. So really, really like Kobe White here, 7.1K tonight. Caruso, I think, is a little bit more in contention, 5.4K. I think he's a very strong value at that price tag. That's really it. I don't think there's a need to get to any of the other value guys here for the Chicago side. Moving on to OKC here. OKC, I mean, 10.3K is an absolute steal for SGA there at that price tag against Minnesota. Chet's price is coming down a little bit, which I do like. I think he's just a solid option. If you're looking for like a solid 35 to 43 fantasy points, Chet is your man. Jalen Williams has been super, super efficient. I don't know if the efficiency can continue. I really like him as a player, one of my favorite young players, but still, I mean, he's shooting damn near 60 to 70% every single game. That's going to drop off at some point. He's going to come back down to earth. So that's more of a stay away from me. But if you think the hot streak continues, you can definitely go to him. As I mentioned with Giddey, he's always a really strong GPP option that has a huge, huge ceiling and a very, very low floor because the minutes are just very, very random for him right now. Yeah, I mean, he's just there. Dort is questionable. If he's out, we could definitely look to a guy to replace him. They'd probably throw Wallace in there to replace him, 4.1K. Don't know if I'd have much interest in him just because he's not going to be aggressive. He's going to be more so out there for defense. But a guy like Isaiah Joe should come off the bench then and see probably close to 20 minutes and be decently aggressive shooting the ball. So I'd probably take a shot on Isaiah Joe. Maybe Kenrich Williams, who's actually been seeing mid-teens minutes. He'd probably see the ball a little bit more as well. So those would be my 2 value options. Moving on to Minnesota here. Very, very cheap price tags on Anthony Edwards and Carl Towns. Not really sure why they're so cheap. So really, 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 really like both of them. I don't know if there's a need to really spend up for a star on the slate tonight, which is how many options there are across the board of very, very cheap guys who can go easily for 35, 45, 50 plus. Anthony Edwards, Carl Towns, Kobe White, Vooch. As you can see here, Jaren Jackson Jr., Scotty Barnes. Like, there's just so many good options on this slate today. So really like those two. In terms of the rest of the team, I don't think there's a need to get to anyone else. I mean, Gobert can have those random good games. I mean, he's been playing strong the past 6 games, but still, I just never feel great playing Gobert, even though he does have that solid double-double upside. Conley just doesn't do enough there to play him. He's kind of all over the place, kind of like a Tyus Jones play. They're just not aggressive at times. Minutes are kind of a little bit all over the place. McDaniels, minutes have gone a little bit up recently. He's been a little bit more aggressive offensively, been playing a little bit better, but still a little bit risky there. And that's really it. There's really no one to consider besides kind of the main 3 for Minnesota. And then moving on to the last game here, Utah versus Houston. Once again, I think Markkanen is coming in at a very, very cheap price tag, 8.4K. He's still going to be the leader of his team. As you can see, double-double in back-to-back games there. Has a very, very solid and high ceiling. Clarkson, coming off the bench, should play solid minutes, but just a little bit too scoring dependent for me. I think Sexton is still a very solid play there. I mean, he's been super efficient. I thought the efficiency would drop, kind of like Jalen Williams, but still, he's been unreal. 31 points, 7 assists, 1 rebound. So if you want to ride the hot streak there with him, his price really hasn't changed. So he looks like a very strong option there. Looks like he's going to be playing himself into a long-term role here for at least the rest of the season with Utah, potentially even a trade candidate. The rest of the team here, Collins, I guess, is a GPP option. Could have some upside. But they just played so many people mid-teens minutes like George, Kessler, Dunn. It's just very, very hard to like any of these guys. I just don't think there's a need to really take a shot on any of them. Moving on to Houston here. Sengun's price is really dropping. Another guy that I really, really like. He's going to play all the minutes he can have. He's double-double, triple-double upside. Kind of been quiet lately in terms of like social media, but we can know he can easily go for 45, 50 plus. So another one of those guys, as you can see, very cheap, 8.1K for his usage in minutes and expected upside. Van Fleet's price has dropped. Another guy that plays massive amount of minutes, has upside. So really like both of them. Smith, it's just the usage, right? The shot attempts. Like he'll see most of the games he sees under 10 shot attempts, which is just why I don't get to him. But when we have those games where there's either like Sengun or Van Fleet outs, even like a Jalen Green, it really helps Jabari Smith Jr. But otherwise, he's more so just a super, super risky GPP option. Same thing with Jalen Green. It just, you don't feel great landing either one of them unless one of the main guys is out, because otherwise they're just not aggressive. Dylan Brooks is back, so that's going to hurt to the upside of these kind of secondary options. And that's really it. So that is it for the slate breakdown. I'll have more on my Twitter later. Hope you guys liked the video. Hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.